we are going to do an overview of properties of a function. And the first property that we're going to talk about is one-to-one. A function is defined as one-to-one when a single element in the domain is mapped to a single element in the codomain. So let's go back just a minute to the sets that we were talking about earlier. If the domain was a list of all the students in the CS department, and the codomain is all of the cars in the parking lot, then let's list out some of the students and some of the vehicles and all of the vehicles in the parking lot. So I've added our students to the codomain or to the domain, and I've added our vehicles to the codomain. We're going to use our function to map elements in the domain to elements in the codomain. So Stacy is going to be mapped to the Jeep, Herb is going to be mapped to the Prius, George is going to be mapped to the F-150, and then Lacey is going to be mapped to the Harley. This function is one-to-one because each element in the domain is mapped to a single element in the codomain. So let's see what we would have to do to make this function not one-to-one. If I were to add another student to the domain, and I were to map this student 1 to the Jeep, if you'll notice, there are two elements in the domain that are matched to a single element in the codomain. This function is not one-to-one. Another way that I can define a one-to-one function is if I reverse the elements, so I make all the second elements the first element. If I reverse the elements, the function still has to be a valid function. So let's write the original function, and then let's write the new function. So this is the function where I have four sets of ordered pairs with the student as the first element in each ordered pair and the vehicle as the second element in each ordered pair. So we have Stacy and the Jeep, Herb and the Prius, George and the F-150, and Lacey and the Harley. So if I reverse these elements, let's see what we get. So when I reverse the elements, which is now the inverse of the function, I can see that I still have a valid function, because in order for a function to be valid, the first element cannot be repeated. So the first element is now the vehicle, and the second element is now the student. So let's write the function for our new, when we added our new student, let's write that new function. So when I write the elements of the ordered pairs for the new function, I notice there's the original first four, but now I have a fifth one. One is being mapped to a Jeep. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to reverse the elements in this new function, and let's see if we still have a valid function. So when I reverse the elements in the new set, we still have the same five ordered pairs, but now I notice a problem. And the problem is that there is a Jeep as the first element in the first ordered pair, and the Jeep is also the first element in the last ordered pairs. This is an invalid function because the definition of a function is that for each input there can only be one output. That means that I cannot have two inputs of a Jeep that will generate two separate outputs. I can't input a Jeep and get Stacy, and I can't input a Jeep and get Juan. This is an invalid function. So another requirement for a function to be one-on-one is that it can have no repeating second elements. A repeating second element would indicate that there are multiple elements in the domain that are mapping to a single element in the codomain. And while that is acceptable for a valid function, it is not acceptable for a one-to-one function. So let me know if you have any additional questions.